Peter, can you tell me about the record-keeping requirements of GDPR then?
Yeah, to be fair, documentation is very important. It's really in regard to demonstrating that you're complying with the regulations. So it's key. The good news is, however, there is some good news on documentation. Is under the current legislation of the Data Protection Act, you're required to notify the Information Commissioner's office at the outset of all the data that you're managing, etc., and how you're managing that. There is actually no longer that requirement to notify.
Oh well, so something less.
Point. Yeah, something less. But the downside is you still have to keep those records. So you may not actually formally notify them of that, but you still have to keep the records. In the case of businesses that have got 250 employees or more, you basically must keep records about your process. You must keep the data records about who the controller is or who the processor is, and that's the name, address of the controller. If you're a processor, the name, address, processor. If you've got a data protection officer or contact point, you must include data protection officer's name and contact details. You must record the purpose of the processing, why you're holding the data. You must also go into the detail of the categories of people that you're holding data on, and the specific, not just the purpose, what categories, how is it analysed, what sort of individuals are you keeping data on, and what's the characteristics of that data. If you're transferring the data, be it outside the EU or to a cloud or to a processor, you must record what the arrangements are for that transfer. And that includes the security arrangements that you've got in place with the processor who you're transferring with. You must record how long you keep the records for. So that implies you must have a data retention policy. So for all those categories of data, you must come to a decision about how long you're keeping it and what you're going to do with it after that particular period lapses. That's important as well. And just in general terms, you've got to record the technical and organisational measures that you've put in place to protect that data. So it's quite a lot that they must do. If you've got, that applies to businesses that've got more than 250 employees. If you're a smaller business with under 250 employees, there are still some important records that you must keep. In particular, if you're less than 250 people and you're one of the companies or businesses or processes that are dealing with high risk data or sensitive data, well then you must keep all the same records as for the businesses over 250. Okay. So high risk data is that's in the special categories of data, sensitive data, but also if you're processing and profiling information at a high number of people, a lot of people, or perhaps you're monitoring CCTVs on a large scale, again, those would be characterised as high risk, and then you would have to keep all that information to hand about why you're processing it.
Right, so what you're saying there is that if you're 250 employees or more, certain prescribed records you've got to keep, and if you're less than 250, it may still apply if you're in the high risk category.
Yeah, then. Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you.